Brent and Diana, welcome to World Building Secrets.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so happy, Brent, so happy to have you back. And Diana, welcome. Really excited that you could join us. I'm going to start off and let's just get to it. Diana, you've worked on so many different story-based IPs, and we've obviously seen you be active in our Discord. And I was wondering, what were your first impressions of the universe when you first joined, and why did you decide to join in the first place?
I decided to join. My joke is always like, Britt told me to, but I was weirdly enough, before I knew about kind of Brent's full involvement, I was already interested. I'm always like scoping out things that have more story to them, and I like teams that come from gaming backgrounds. So I had interest there, and like my first impressions of the Discord, it's always first impressions with Discords, bananas. But a lot of enthusiasm for people who are like, this seems different and interesting. And even though I may not know everything that's being tossed about here, I want to be a part of this. And that was the feeling I got from a lot of people in Discord.
Amazing. I guess this will be a question for the both of you is, what's one of your favorite IPs that you've ever been either a part of or not? Brent, you can start.
I mean, I'm going to go with the easy answer, which is Star Wars, because it's really kind of a love-hate, right? There's so many things to love about it in terms of just from a writer standpoint, it's a really fun universe to write in. There's so many different stories to tell, so many different characters to choose from on the light side, on the dark side, bounty hunters in the middle. Like it's just a wealth of opportunities in that regard. But it also comes with so much baggage, right? And the fandom, while it's probably the greatest fandom on the planet, it's also the most challenging fandom to please.
Sure. Yeah.
And so again, there's a love-hate relationship with it, but I think I wouldn't trade, being involved with that universe for anything.
What about you, Dana?
I can echo a lot of Brent's thoughts on Star Wars. There's good and bad. It's challenging. I mean, especially, in the film and TV industry, you're always talking about you want IP that has a big audience. Large audiences come with challenges because they love the thing that they love and they don't want new on the whole. But new is how you bring in new audiences. So it's this balance that you're always trying to figure out, because I don't like it when IPs anger the established audience, the ones that brung you. But you do have to always keep innovating on your tech, on your story, on your feelings, on your themes to remain relevant to the world that's there now. And so that makes an IP like Star Wars challenged.
Definitely.
But I loved working on it because I love the story. I mean, I grew up with it. I, stood in line in 1977 to go to the movie. So I have a real nostalgia thing. I have a real personal thing with it. I know the stories upwards and backwards. But it was hard. It was really, really hard. I think something that was like just filled with a lot of love and I'm always like pulling for it, that I was able to work on, is the Muppets. I mean, that also had a vast world. It played around with the idea of physics. It played around with, what you can and cannot do. How do you meld the real world with this imaginary world? I mean, I'm going back to Sesame Street also when I bring up like Snuffleupagus. So I just think that there is such an imagination to Muppets. I think it is just trying to, it's caught up in a lot of more so like what was the business, and the business also will always influence any IP, because the business, when it's doing well, what the business is there to do is to make sure that the IP stays alive and always finds an audience and always finds care on both sides, care for the story and care for the audience. That's what good business does for an IP.
Can you give us a little bit of insight on your involvement with Lucasfilm, Star Wars, even the Muppets, on, what exactly, how were you involved, and maybe what were your favorite parts with these IPs and projects?
I mean, it's like a type of world building. You're just trying to figure out where else can the story take you? Where else can the characters take you? What stays authentic? What's the new tech that's out there that can also help to promote the story in ways that you couldn't do with the current tech? And I am including, film as tech and video as tech, VR. So those are all, I'm just lumping it all together in like one word. And those are ways that, I always talk about the fact that every type of media does something specific and special to a story that the other media can't do. So games are wholly different from what a film can do. Film is a passive experience that's, either on your TV screen or it's, in a theater away from you. So I think that's a lot of what I was doing on those IP and other ones that I'm actually not allowed to discuss.
Awesome. I'm really curious to hear your NDAs. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on how the universe is approaching IP versus some of the other projects, whether it is Star Wars or Muppets or The Lord of the Rings, any other IPs, how the two compare and how different the universe and our IP is and our approach to it. It's a question for both of you.
Well, I started with my gibberish, so I'll continue with mine.
Go ahead.
I think the similarities is care for character and story and community. But I think the approaches are so different and fascinating in terms of like this idea of like shared co-creation, how they're treating the audience. And I think it's going to be really exciting and frightening. So I think I'm just going to leave my answer there because I think whatever Brent said is going to completely go opposite of what I just said.
Let's hear it.
No, I'm, you can't see it, but I am shivering right now at the thought of co-creation. But this is why I wanted to bring Diana aboard, because I think up until now, kind of this podcast has been focused on world building in a traditional sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about, what was the birth of the idea? How is it being developed internally with a wiki and teams and the art team and design? And then how are we expanding it out through authors and comics and all that kind of stuff, which is all great and fascinating. But there's the elephant in the room here is that we're world building in collaboration with our community as well. And that is a uncharted territory to the degree that we're trying it. And some of the, frankly, the legal mechanisms behind it, we're kind of all fumbling around and searching and trying to blaze a new trail. In a way, we're a little bit like Malcolm Orion, taking that leap of faith off into the unknown. And I can tell you, it is terrifying, but also very exciting, right? Because I feel like we're at an inflection point in terms of media and culture and technology where it's now possible to really do this and do it well. And so I think let's go for it.
Definitely. How do you think Web3 impacts IP and storytelling? But I think probably IP and specifically.
I'll let Diana handle that one.
I think Web3. I think Web3 is a part of it. I don't know if it challenges. I think it's just to me, my definition is I think about Web3, and if you want to break down Web3 into whether you're talking about just a blockchain, you're talking about the tools that are there, you're talking about NFTs, whatever it is that it's a tool that an IP can use. Because it's not like you're going to forget anything else. You're still going to be communicating to your audience via Web 2. You're still going to be leaning into what are the processes and business models of traditional legacy media. So I think Web 3 is there that can also just enhance everything that we're doing, and it does bring us a bit closer to the community.
Definitely. How do you think it allows maybe for more ownership within co-creation and community creation and trade at the same time, right? Because any of our, let's say our collectibles, for example, like the fact that not only can you own it, you can actually keep it and then one day trade it, or you can sell it, you can monetize it. How do you see that developing and impacting a variety of different IPs in the future?
I have no answer for that one because the IP's the future. Because I mean, IP's the
It's a
future.
tough
I
one.
mean, we're, traditional legacy media is just my favorite three words to always throw out is, it's built on contracts of between 1972 and 1984 and still uses those contracts as the basis of those.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so, yeah, I mean, the boilerplate agreement, or some people, what it was originally called it was called schmuck insurance, by people inside the industry. Um, and it was to ensure, and some people say to ensure for the future. I was like, it's to ensure against the future so that creators don't have a portion of those dollars that come from new strides that are made in innovation.
Hmm.
So, I do think that IPs that develop within this period right now of Web3 that are able to stay outside of traditional legacy media will be able to thrive in a certain way, but then once it hits that wall of traditional legacy media and their old contracts and the people who believe in those contracts the way that they are, we're going to have so much friction until we're able to kind of become this instead of this. So, and that's just going to be hard and ugly, and there will be many, many tears.
Do you see any future where those legal formalities that have been set so long ago get revisited and redrafted to adapt to how technology and how time is moving? Do you see that happening or not really?
I mean, gosh, I hope so. I mean, that's what my company, Kinetic Energy Entertainment, we are banking on that. That's our mission and our model.
Hmm.
I just don't see how it can sustain. I think, look, those contracts were put into being for a reason. And I think
Hmm.
that at that point, that reason made sense. Film was what started franchises. Film is what started IP at that point. We're
Hmm.
not seeing that now. We're seeing IP coming, especially from games. We're seeing coming from hobby games. The mere fact that D&D is finally getting a movie, but that's been around for a super duper long time. So that is a franchise that did not start as film, but yet we're using contracts that really believe in film as and the transmedia term is always mothership. That film begets everything else, and I think that as we are seeing IP and fandom come from other areas that are not starting in film, the contracts are
Hmm.
going to need to start to reflect that. That's
Definitely. I
my
think the
hope.
universe applies that in many ways, right? I mean, we're a franchise IP and we're not starting with film. So yeah, really curious where that goes. But let's go
Well,
ahead, Brent.
and to make a point though, we are an aspiring franchise IP. We're hoping to become a franchise IP, but it's even different in that I think we will ultimately be lumped under as a gaming franchise, right? That's kind of the spirit of what we're trying to do. We're trying to revolutionize in some ways the way game companies and game development is done. So, as a gaming franchise or an aspiring gaming franchise, we're also not introducing ourselves to the public in the way games are traditionally introduced, right? A game is usually a product that's developed, right, behind kind of closed doors. And then at some point, even just in beta, it's released to the public, right? And the public interacts with it, and their feedback, right, is taken into account in terms of, oh, they don't like this level or this isn't working as well. And the product is iterated and then ultimately released, right, for some sort of monetization opportunity. We're not doing any of those things. We're still in the design stages, and we are sharing what we have as we go along, taking people's feedback, but also saying we want to blur the line between creator and community and let community become creator, right?
Yep.
We're not giving them the reins, but we're saying, jump in the back seat. We're going for a ride, right?
Definitely.
And that's a fundamentally different approach to franchise, not just building, but marketing, exploitation, monetization, everything. And so again, that's where I feel like we're trying something so different. There really isn't a precedent for what we're doing. or exactly how we're doing it. And so these are the things that I think are going to create friction, right, down the road. And we may be ultimately, in retrospect, 5-10 years from now, one of the projects that causes the industry to change, or we may be the one that runs head first into a brick wall, right?
Definitely.
And we become a case study of, how things work and how things don't, right? It's impossible to know at this point what the future holds. But I do feel like, one of the virtues here is that, our relationship with traditional media right now is non-existent, and there is a version of our path where we never need it, right? If our community grows large enough internally, we can, through various means, create our own linear media content. We could create our own animated series. We can create our own feature film through crowdfunding or whatever, and distribute it right to our community, right? Through our own platforms. We may also have the opportunity to be approached by a major studio or a TV network or a streamer and say, we love your community, we love your IP. How can we make traditional media out of this? And that's where, as Diana said, things get complicated, right?
So let's talk about things getting complicated and things being a little positive. So I'm really curious. Let's go back to community ownership. And yes, this is exactly what we're about and what we want to encourage our community to do. Let's start a little bit general. What are some opportunities? What are some challenges with just having community and having somebody else be involved with somebody else's IP and having a say, not only a say, but also actually a physical say, right? They can create something and we can then use it, or we can motivate them to own it and use it within the universe. What are some challenges? What are some challenges with community ownership?
I'll let Diana take that one.
Go ahead.
I have to start with all the hard questions. Okay. Gosh, community ownership is tricky. Like it is delightful because when you start to see people who are not in the quote unquote industry, whether we're talking about gaming or film or TV, any of the traditional legacy media, like they haven't been brought up with these rules of you can do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And it's, they come up with amazing stuff because they don't care about rules, because they don't know the rules that they have to care about. And I think you start to see some really creative, innovative storytelling, character visualizations, all that sort of stuff. I think where we can hit friction and some complications and sadness and tears is we as human beings, our go-to space is ownership. Is I feel like this is mine. I love this thing. And that is a complicated emotion. And let's mix that with, what traditional legacy media has allowed to happen, which is UGC. So user generated content, this is just kind of community co-creation is kind of like the flip side of UGC. And UGC is always seen as like fan fiction. The fans can do it, but we're not allowing you to monetize off of it. It's just for you to show your expression of love, but don't be crazy. We still own it. It is ours. We can smack it down. There's cease and desist, we can do all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Now in this new world, I am curious to see how is that going to work. I'm curious to see what does it mean to allow someone to go out and to make something off of what you as a universe has built, the tools you've given them, the creative you've given them to allow them to make what they want to make. Who are going to be the bad actors? How do you protect your moral values of this when someone can go out and do something not so moral valued? So, I think that these are the issues that we know can come up. We've seen it in other areas. But what does it mean in real practice? I mean, to Brent's point, you guys are really kind of, I'm going to say the first, I'm sure someone's come up with like 9 billion other examples that have happened before, but at each point, the first becomes not the first because of something else that has made it a little bit different. And I feel like why I'm saying that universe is the first is because we're now adding on the layer of like Web3 and NFTs, and we have the You have Discord, which is a tool that wasn't available in this way before, like, 9 years ago or whatever. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's the first with now all these different things that we have. So, you guys are going to run into issues where people are going to, where it's like, wow, didn't see that one coming. And that's the fun and excitement and terror of being the first.
Especially when when you think of in the future, when this is all happening at a very large scale and there's so many different creations happening and it's really fast paced, and how do you track it? And that makes me think of a scenario I think we spoke about, and Brent, you mentioned, is like, let's say Universal approaches or Warner Bros approaches somebody saying, I really like this version of clearly some kind of Universe work. Who gets the ownership there? Who gets the credit? Who gets to be in control of that specific project? How do we, if the person does, then how do we make sure that it does align with how we're even aware that existed? There's so many different things that I think people do have to keep in mind, but at the same time, there's so many different amazing opportunities. Brent.
Yes.
Your turn.
Well, I know that in our kind of, community content user agreement, or I'm sure there's a better name for it than that. There are some general parameters, right, about how interaction can work. And I know one of them is there is a limiting factor in terms of, someone can go out and make content and strike a deal to say, hey, I made this cool video based on with Universe content, and I'm putting it on this platform, right? What they can't do based on, again, the agreement is go to Netflix, right, and sell a deal, because there's a cap on what size of company or platform you can go interact with. So how that becomes enforceable and ultimately what that one clause may need a whole 20-page legal delineation, right, as we move forward to further define what the parameters are. But I think this is, again, where we start off and we say, okay, here are the rules, and then we wait for people to break them, right? I'm sure the tax code, when it was first introduced, was probably this long, right? And now it's War and Peace. So I think that that's just the world we live in. It's like, we know what we know right now, and we won't know what's possible until people show us what's possible based on, as Diana said, just following their own whims and emotions. This is the great thing to me about community collaboration, which is we're making manifest the desire for people to invest emotionally in a universe, right? And that comes with not just the desire to express themselves, which you can see in all sorts of, fan fiction, fan art, but even something as like cosplay, where people show, here's who I am in the universe, or here's who I want to be, right? Yeah. The great thing about a fan con is that you're going to a place where you have a lot of like-minded people and you're getting validation, right? But what's rarely happening is you're not getting validation from the creators, right? Or through the creators to the community. So I think that the channels that are being opened up here fulfill a lot of the desires that the audience has, because I think right now, especially in the world we live, we're creating media and sharing media, and I use that term loosely, is so easy. A lot of people who never would have thought of themselves as creators now see themselves as some form of creators, right? Yeah. And so to have a universe where that wall has been, if not torn down, at least very lowered, right? It's easy to jump over it. I think we're going to enable a lot of really interesting creation. And I think, honestly, the majority of it will be great, right? It'll be great in the sense that it expands the universe in really cool ways. And as Diana said, we're going to get people bringing ideas to the table that a lot of us at the center of this, who've been doing it in a very specific way for a long time, would just never have thought of, right? There's just no way. We're going to, whether it's because people are coming from all these different world cultures, or they just are coming at it from a completely different place and a point of view, we're going to see ideas brought to the table that are invaluable. And unfortunately, there will be some subset of those, probably a very small, that take the universe in ways that we don't like. And that's just going to have to be something we deal with, and how we deal with it, I think is going to be, part of the challenge and part of the learning experience. The merge becomes the governing body, right, of the hub, right? So humanity, through Malcolm Orion, discovers the hub and discovers and essentially reawakens it, and discovers that there was a whole, what we call a first cycle, right, where there was a whole series of races that interacted, and without getting into all of the details, something went wrong, and then it went dormant for a long period of time, and now Malcolm Orion kind of activates the second cycle. It's like, okay, everyone's going to be given a chance to do it the right way, right? And so humanity kind of is that the first group, but then more races come on board, right? And then at some point, it's like, okay, how do we organize all of these different opinions? Well, let's form a governing body called the merge, and we're going to set up some rules about how this whole thing works. They didn't create, right, any of the technology, but they start to try and figure out how to regulate it, if you will. And so the merge is meant to be this benevolent kind of, like NATO or G8 or however you want to, think of the corollary to our world. But of course, anything like that has, a bureaucratic nature to it, and it starts to become political. And so in our world, there become, forces that are opposing it, and there are forces that are championing it, and it's trying to protect itself, which all creates great drama. But from a community collaboration standpoint, we want to approach world building in as fun and an entertaining way as possible, so that the process itself feels in world, right, and even immersive to a certain degree. And so to answer your question about what is the merge and how does it relate to this idea of planet building, what we want to do is, instead of saying, hey, there's tons of planets out there, go make some, right? We are looking at it as this is a collaboration, right? We want to then maybe create starter kits and say, hey, the Masso system has detected a new planet that is available to come online and be a place that you can jump to, right? The circumstances and the history of the planet are such that it's a safe place to jump potentially. Well, okay, so we have some reconnaissance images of it. We have little bits of detail about it that we know. And now we, as the merge, will open it up for exploration. And exploration means, hey, there's ultimately a reconnaissance form or a multimedia presentation even that you as an individual in the community or as a group are going to take and say, I'm going to go explore this planet with my imagination, right? Based on the little bits of details that you've given me. And I'm going to come back with, here's what we know, right? We spent 2 weeks working out this thing. This is a really cool thing. We as explorers think this should be admitted into the merge. We think this is, we're a race worthy to be included and people can jump to and become then part of canon. And so by taking that approach, it allows for a back and forth, right? We're seeding something, people are creating something, multiple groups can go explore the exact same planet. And at the end of the day, we can look at it as the merge, right? As the kind of benevolent rulers, right, of this universe, and say, wow, look at all of these different presentations. We like this one, right? And then we can anoint that as you've been admitted into the merge. You're now a planet that can be jumped into. And what does that mean for the explorers, for that team, as again, individual or group, doesn't matter, to become something where they are kind of lionized within canon as they were the explorers that found this place, that brought it into the universe. And then now it becomes into the wiki, and now we can write short stories against it. We can develop games on it, and they are always part of the history and part of the lore. And so, again, it's just taking fan fiction or UGC and giving it a little bit more of a wrapper and a little bit more kind of making it an experience, because we also imagine that rather than just submitting your presentation, we may have a video conference call with, a council of creators, and you have to come on and make your presentation, right?
Yeah.
And we'll record that and the community can watch it. And this is also something that many submissions may be happening, and the community will probably do the first level of voting, right? So the only people that make it to the merge have been vetted, kind of American Idol style.
Yeah.
So it's that type of, if we're going to do it, let's do it in a fun and unique way, and make every aspect of content creation, whether it's internal, external, interactive, entertaining and fun.
100%. It sounds fun. Like, I would want to do that. And I think the exciting part is that there's an opportunity for legacy to be there, for you as a creator to leave a little bit of legacy, to have that planet and to be involved and also learn, not only cooperate with people, of your stature and the rest of our team, but really have the opportunity to build something and have it live forever on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dana, do you have any thoughts on this as, outsider perspective? What would you do? Or how would you do it differently?
I'm going to sit down here.
Oh my gosh. I mean, when Brent was as he was describing it, I just immediately thought of Lewis and Clark, immediately thought of, all the explorers that we were taught about, colonialists that we were taught about in school, and but also, before Columbus set off to new lands to bring disease and kill Native Americans, but he had to speak with the Queen of Spain, who was and he's like, well, what about if I did this, and she's like, I got these ships, here's these 3 ships you can maybe use. So she technically set up his parameters for how he could go and explore, and then he came back with a report to get more cash. So, that's just what I thought about, hopefully in a, completely non-racist, not killing natives kind of way. But I think that structure's there. I think that's super interesting. I think for a community person who is I'm not going to, writing prose is not my thing. I don't have enough skills to make a short, but man, I can come up with some really cool things that could be on a planet. I think that also opens up more possibilities for more community members who are like, this I can do. This part, this is fun. This is how I go out exploring with my kid in the woods behind our house. I can do this. And so I think that's super exciting. We can always quickly go to the dark side of then who gets what? What happens if somebody, Paramount wants to make this movie about this planet, but yet, it was, Linda from Idaho who came up with all these ideas. You can quickly go to the dark side, but right now in this moment, I think the possibilities are wondrous.
I agree. I think with anything in the world, you can always find the negative, and there's always always something negative. Yeah.
It's
and in many
always
ways,
negative.
Yeah, in many situations, it's something that you need to focus on immediately. But I think in situations like these, it's really not, because it's not something. There's no point of stressing about the future. One, but secondly, this is just such an incredible opportunity for our community, and like you said, for people that don't maybe have that experience of editing, even that scene visualization. I wouldn't be able to do that. That takes some technical skill. And a lot of what we'll be asking our community, or not asking, motivating our community to create is pretty high tech. Anything, even our Ryu himself is insanely well designed and very well produced. And so I think that's, that brings up a really good point. Brent, any thoughts?
Well, I think that to me, the most exciting part of this, of what we're talking about in terms of the community content is inviting the community to form communities within. Right. Mm-hmm. So it reminds me a little bit of film school, which I never got into, but I heard great stories about, which is that, okay, everybody needs to make a film. Right. And it's well, but not everyone is ready to make a film. So what happens is somebody that wants to be a director says, I have a vision and I just need someone to write it because I'm not a great writer. All right. So now you've got a writer and a director that pair up. It's okay, who wants to be the cinematographer? Well, that would be me, right? Okay. I'm an actor. I want to try. And suddenly you have everyone clumping together into little sub communities to produce a content. And I think that that is a really interesting opportunity here where, and we may explore, like, how do we not just encourage, but enable the formation of these little communities where groups can come together. Again, it could be an auteur. It could be someone that says, I work alone, right? I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do everything. I'm a one-man band or a one-woman band, and I'm going to do everything soup to nuts, right? That's how I like to roll. Yeah. But for other people, like you were saying, that may have a specialty, right? They can say, oh, well, I want to contribute this way. Oh, come be part of our team, right? And so the idea that we can allow people, encourage and hopefully enable people to form groups and form new friendships, right, around the content and the creation of content, to me, that's the win here, right? I totally agree that this could all go to a very challenging place, but for now, there seems to be a lot of opportunity, and I think it fulfills a lot of the compulsions about why people form a community around content, right? It's like everyone is like-minded in that they say there's something in here that appeals to me, right? And if I look around, it appeals to all of these people too. So now we have something in common, right? How can we deepen that bond and now take it to the next level and say, it's not just that we have an interest, it's that we're going to invest our time and our energy into creating something and doing it together. And I think that kind of that spirit of exploration and cooperation and collaboration is at the heart of what we think the Universe is thematically from a narrative standpoint. So all of this kind of feeds on itself to some degree, and that's ultimately what gets me so excited about the possibilities here.
I mean,
but I think you also nailed it by saying two words, like encourage and enable. And the fact that you guys are being intentional about it. So you're giving some structure, not just saying, hi, everybody, run out there and try to make some stuff. Good luck to you. Don't know what you're going to do, how it's going to be structured, how people are going to see it or anything else. You're putting in some process in place that you're saying, and again, encourage and enable. Here's a place you can come back with. Here's how people can see what you've done, how you can have open communication. You get communication with us as Universe, but also with the community that's forming around it. And I think it's that intentionality that is so important at this beginning space. Again, can quickly go to the dark side, but that's what we're discussing. This is about how you're able to support and encourage that people go, also still doing a little bit of protection because you're still not sure how that baby's going to walk. So you got to put a couple of guardrails. And so definitely. I think that's what's super exciting to me about all of this.
Yeah, it is. And I think anybody that's worked on anything creative really is nothing great is done alone. There's always something, even if it's primarily done by one person, there's always somebody else involved. And that was exactly what at the end of every episode I ask, what's your world building secret? And Andy Baker, that was his. He was, you need to find the right team, find the people, and you will suddenly see all these different sparks of inspiration just flying from each other. And once you find that team, the wheels will start turning. That's all he said. And he left it at that. And I think this was such an incredible episode, and I'm very happy you guys both were able to join. So my final question to you both is, what is your world building secret? And you can take this as advice, just something that people can take away from the episode and, hopefully go on and create. Brent, you can start.
Mine is really simple, and it's coming from a standpoint of being a creator for most of my adult life, or all of my adult life, and learning this lesson somewhat the hard way early on, and then having the cringe of watching young creators coming up having not learned that lesson yet, right? And you can tell people this, and they can nod and whatnot, but it's a very difficult thing to do. And that is when you're world building, right? And which naturally, as you said, lends itself to collaboration. I could never have created this world alone, right? It is the work of many people. The singular rule that I apply every day when I start to collaborate is leave your ego at the door. And the reason is because it can't be, at the end of the day, whose idea wins, right? It has to be, how do we make the world the best it can be? And so oftentimes I've been in situations where you see people arguing passionately for their idea, trying to shoot down other ideas because they're so intent on making their mark, right? And ultimately what that does is it frustrates the process, and it's trying to force the issue rather than just letting things naturally evolve, right? And so that idea, though, of a creator, someone coming in and saying, I have ideas, but I'm going to relinquish control over how those ideas get implemented, especially even in this process where I was the top narrative person. Had I taken the approach that I have ideas and I'm only going to accept things that are in line with mine rather than things that challenge mine, then this would be a very different universe and it wouldn't be as interesting. And so that idea that if you're going to world build, right, especially with other people, leave your ego at the door.
That's a great one. Diana?
I wholly co-sign what Brent said. My biggest thing when I'm working with any creators and world building and myself, when I worked with Zach Morrison, we built this comic book, Gatecrashers, is you can't stop on the word cool. Cool is fleeting. Something else will come along that's cooler than what you are. Cool is people will maybe start to describe something as, oh my God, this thing was so cool. But then they go into why they really cared about it, why they continue to watch it, to play it, to listen to it, to experience it. So world building, you can start with cool, but what is the underneath? And it's always asking questions about what it is. So when someone says to me that like, it's a world in which water is the fuel, then I'm asking who figured that out? Who are the scientists in that world? What then, if water is a fuel, then what would a car look like? I'm always asking more and more and more questions. That just starts to build out the world. And so you may start with somebody walking down the street. But then I want to know like what else is on that street. It just can't be, well, there's this cool car here, there's this cool car here, but is it a car? Does it float? Does it run? Does it roll? Does it just take off? And does it transport, like, teleport, not transport? So I want to, cool is just the icing on top of the icing on top of the icing. We have to get to like, what is the cake and what are the amazing ingredients in that cake that we care about?
I love that. That's such a great analogy.
It's so funny. I will say that I give that pitch often. I often don't tell people, leave your ego at the door. That's like something you have to learn yourself. But I do give that exact same pitch. And here's how I phrase it. Don't settle for cool as your main criteria, right? It's a great way to bring ideas to the table. Oh, this would be cool. But that, like you said, that's just the entry point, right?
Yep.
That it's not enough to build a world on.
It's
what's
not.
cool.
Yeah, and cool is the marketing. Cool is what gets somebody in the door. Like, yeah. I mean, trust. Like the first time that Matrix commercial came on, and it was the like, and I was like, I'm in. Let's go. Right. Let's go.
Yep, that's cool.
But then you get into that movie, and like people talked about everything else.
Yeah,
like people went back and they went back and they went back.
Yep.
So, cool just gets you in the door. That's it.
Yep. There's nothing worse than like seeing something cool, like an advertisement, and then you go actually, like, let's say, watch the movie, and you're just so disappointed. So, and I've had that. I can't remember which movies, but so disappointed.
Too many.
But
it
happens. Happens with so many movies. I feel like it happened a lot for me with like live action movies where it's like so exciting and the commercials like incredible, and I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna be awesome, and then I go and I'm just sitting there like. And that's the worst.
There's no why.
There's no why. Yeah. It wasn't. I feel like any good idea has been well dissected and well tested and seen. Yeah. How does it work? How does it work with this? And, to maybe wrap it up is also longevity of it. Does it last throughout the story? Can it stay relevant? And can it stay important enough for it to be there in the first place? Because if you have to get rid of it after 5 minutes, it probably shouldn't. Maybe it doesn't have to be there at all.
Correct.
Thank you both so much. It was such a pleasure speaking to you, and I really hope that I can have you back.
Thank you.
I do anything Brent wants me to do.
Thank you so much.